Welcome to Sim.bc, where right now is 15:21, and yeah, before you say it, I do know what it looks like. I do know what this is. It's not the best outfit ever, isn't it? Yeah, I know. But that is because it's graduation tomorrow, and needless to say, I'm not saying that I'm stressing out. That would be ludicrous to say. That would be an understatement of the highest degree. What I'm doing is that I'm running through all of my different clothes because I'm checking them out, because it turns out that the suit that I wanted didn't really match as good as I wanted it to with the shirt that I already had. So now I'm just looking through all the different alternatives that I do have, and I've been through all my clothes several times, and now I'm back on square, I don't know, 15, something like that. And I've been going through everything, and now I'm just mixing and matching to see if there's something in my wardrobe that matches nicer than I thought it would. So that probably explains why I look like I do. And I was just like, you know what? I can record a video in between these things, gain some perspective on the situation, because right now it's not the best, is it? Anyway, today we're going to talk about something that I deem to be very interesting, something that I deem to be really funny even, something that I think is hilarious to actually discuss. Now, this will be a testament to my loneliness once and for all, because I kind of discovered this point of view and this idea when I was out walking yesterday, having a bit of a walk by myself out in the woods. That's not true, but out at the lake, and I was thinking, you know what, it's a lovely evening to discuss some economics and to critique some theory, because isn't that what we're all about? It just came to me one day in the shower and all of that. And what I would like to talk about is the inverse relationship between the supply and demand curve. Yeah, hilarious. I am really the life of a party when I turn up. Anyway, this is just something experimental. I'm sure that I'm not the first one to coin this idea, right? To coin the different phrases that I will use. There is probably lots of research done in the area already, but if there isn't, I would just like to display my thoughts on the topic before I actually gain any bias by actually researching the topic fully, because I thought there was something that has gone unexplored, at least during my university studies. Could be the case, could be very likely, that my tutors and my teachers have been saying, this is the main critique towards the model, and this is why, and I've just been sitting like, sure, I hear you, like 3 years ago, and that could be why I don't remember it, but to me it sounded like the most brilliant idea ever. So, let me just give you a rundown. Supply and demand is kind of essential to the entire economic structure as we know it, right? This consumption behavior that is working in society. Basically what it says is that if there is a demand for a product, making one line, it will be met by a supply of that product. So if I want water bottles and I am prepared to pay a lot for these water bottles, then people are going to supply water bottles because there is a financial incentive to do so. Now, if we assume that there is a low barrier of entry, or we can say that it's non-existent, we can follow Adam Smith's theorem from 1776, I would like to believe to say, about the invisible hand in the market, which basically says that, well, if we don't intervene, the market should actually supply the demand optimally because there is a financial incentive to do so. Yet again, if there is no actual barriers of entry, which leads to a thriving economy through lots of competition. And competitions, 2 thumbs fresh for that, mates. We actually like that. However, as I said, I was out walking and I was thinking, but what if there is an inverse relationship? I actually didn't start with that. I started with something along the lines, and just, a disclaimer and proclaimer here, I haven't really thought this through really that thoroughly, so this is going to be my thought process as well. So you join me in the alpha stages of this idea. So I was thinking, people are not rational, right? That's kind of the entire, what you would say, the entire assumption of all economic theories that we have, kind of based to some extent on the efficient market hypothesis that, well, people are efficient. It's kind of the CAPM assumption holds as well. The capital asset pricing model is the entire idea that, well, all investors act without their own biases. Yeah, they're not biased towards something that cannot be explained. For instance, feelings and so on and so forth. Now, feelings can be explained, of course. I mean, people can be sad and that can be explanatory. But you get what I'm saying. People shouldn't have personal biases that interfere with the market, because if they do, well, then it's getting incredibly complex to anticipate actions of people, since everybody's different, and well, there wouldn't not be a model being able to cover that. So all economics models that we have, they kind of revolve around the assumption that, well, we have rational consumers, that if something is exactly the same, for instance, if I have two water bottles that are exactly the same, now yes, I know there's water in this one and not in this one, but just assume for the moment that they are exactly the same. Except that they are sold from two different distributors. What kind of this rationale of the consumer is that if they are exactly the same and they're in the exact same proximity in the exact same area of you, you should buy the one with the lowest price. It's kind of easy as that, right? Now, there are lots of theories going against this, such as brand loyalty, brand image, and other marketing management, kind of ideas out there. All of these marketing issues getting in the way for the rational consumer behavior. Now, or one can argue that it's actually there to actually explain the difference. However, what I was thinking, since I've been talking about, bragging and nagging and stuff, it's something that I deem to be very interesting. I kind of combined that thought process with the supply and demand, theorem that we do have existent in the literature. And what I came to is that, well, you know how when you nag, and I've done an entire video on this that wasn't that structured, so I don't say that it's your problem if you don't go watch it, because it was a bit all over the place. But basically, the main points that I was trying to make in that video was that, well, if you nag more and more, people want to hear about it less and less. Saying that if you brag more, people is going to want to hear about it less and less. It's kind of the opposite effect of supply and demand, one can argue. So the more you actually nag, the less people want to hear about it. However, when you stop bragging, people are going to probably talk about what you were bragging about as if, well, it's a good thing, because it's probably a good thing that you were bragging about, but they're going to take it up if you stop bragging about it, which is kind of interesting in my opinion, because it kind of shows that there is a demand for it. But this is, in my opinion, depending on how you see the variables, because you could see nagging or bragging in this regard as supply to a need that people want to listen about it, and that listening about it is actually the demand, in which they would follow exactly of the supply and demand curves, because, well, we demand more, that means we will supply more, and all of that good stuff, right? Even though this theorem, if we talk about it in psychology, it would actually, and this is hilarious, by the way, in my opinion, most of you will probably just sit there and be like, oh, well, I didn't really get it. That if this were to hold and no barriers of entry in a psychological setting, that would probably mean that the rational friend should find new friends if you complain too much. Which, again, that probably doesn't work with most of you. But I think that was bloody hilarious. But if you see nagging and bragging as the demand for you to actually nag and brag about perhaps a product, about something that you bought, about something that you do, and the supply being people being supplying their ears to listen to you, because you could see it from that perspective as well. Then the psychological supply and demand for no, not psychological, let's say the consumer behavior demand, there's a consumer behavior supply and demand. That sounds bad as well. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that the behavioral supply and demand of people and their psychology is opposite to the supply and demand of the rational consumer of the market. And in order to fully explore, in order to fully extend and understand, and in order to, sufficiently estimate how the supply and demand function, of the consumer should work, how the rational consumer should utilize, we also need to take into consideration how the irrational consumer would work. And as I said, I was just thinking about this, kind of came to me in the shower, but not in the shower, but kind of came to me when I was out of a walk. Yet again, I thought this was hilarious. It's probably a testament to my humor, and what I deem to be interesting and what I do in my spare time. Probably said a lot more about me than I would have liked it to. But kind of exploring this possibility, what is the implication of actually exploring this to begin with? Because many people will probably sit there and be like, well, so, you have a working hypothesis, I guess. You have formulated an idea that people should behave in this manner and in this way. Now, if we are so nice to be able to say that my life experience could be deemed as some form of in-depth interview, right? To support the findings of the nagging, bragging, demand, supply idea, which we can't. We cannot, base the entire research on one interview. Not that I've done an interview with myself. And, well, there are all manners of different gaping holes in this. But let's just assume that holds. That could be tested in itself, right? If we assume that holds, So we can say that this nagging and listening is actually a thing that's happening in society. Then how can we apply this to understand the supply and the demand of the consumer? And this is where it kind of gets interesting and a bit more abstract. So if you thought that we were abstract already, talking about both the irrational and rational consumer in the same kind of graph, that's going to be the aim at least, having the same x-axis and different y-axes, probably being the, what should we say, haven't even formulated one for the y-axis, but probably going to be something along the lines of supply of one good, and in the y-axis downwards, in the third and fourth quadrant, it's probably going to be like what? Listening? Could be positive both ways, actually. Anyway, what we're going to look at when combining the two graphs is the idea that if a rational consumer buys something, they should buy something because of the price, the quality, and so on and so forth. Given that all of these things are equal, they're going to go for the lowest price. However, if someone has been nagging about this product for a very long time in their physical environment, or in their social environment for that matter, I guess we can say now that the internet is so big as it is, and it has been for the last, 30 years? One can argue, right, that if we're in the proximity of someone in our social circle or a physical distance that is bragging or nagging a lot about a certain product, even if the products are entirely equal in quality, place, and brand image, they're going to be different because of the social implication that you endure. And this is kind of why we have the assumption of, well, everybody's rational consumers, because we cannot calculate everybody's social circle. That is true, and to some extent I can imagine that brand image has tried to be taken into consideration this factor, the idea that if you have someone in your social circle that kind of brags a lot or is very against one brand, that's going to affect your perceived quality of the brand, or just your perceived quality of life after buying a certain object or a certain brand, for instance, then let's just say. And that is trying to explain the behavioral consumption, the consumption behavior of the consumer, basically. But what I would like to do, and what I think is something that is new and interesting, is the entire idea of, well, what if we try to generalize the irrational behavior of the consumer based on their social circle, not necessarily based on brand image, but how much people actually complain on some form of average, and then try and put those people who are complaining to a certain degree, and this is going to be huge generalizations, and we're going to make equally as much assumptions, but probably it's going to be better, or at least the idea is that the practical and theoretical implication is going to be that this is still going to be better than the assumption of rational consumers, because we know that if we say that we have an assumption of rational consumerism, the theory isn't going to work. That's the entire idea behind it, right? It's like saying that nobody cares about loss aversion, and you're just like, but do they though? I mean, do they? Anyway, so if we kind of divide this idea of how much people actually complain or brag into different groups and into different sections, we can apply that to different groups of people in different areas. Now, this will, as I said, lead to generalization, it will lead to categorization, it will lead to further categorization of groups, which I'm personally against, but for the sake of the research, it could be pretty good. So in order to test this, we test different groups that are bragging in different rights, nagging in different rights. We see how they behave with the same kind of consumption of products that non-bragging groups do. And then we can estimate that based on what group a certain individual is taking part of, if it's a sports organization, if it's a different institution, if it's a part of occupation, we can have a score allocated to that, an estimation of how much they would probably brag or nag about a specific topic, or about a specific, what you would say, range of products, or just a specific product overall. And we can, based on that, estimate how, what you would say, how accurate the supply and demand based on the rational consumer will actually be taking into consideration the irrational behavior of groups. Boom! I think this is hilarious. I can talk about this for days. Now, I'm sure that there are lots of you who are going to say, well, this has already been done research on, mate. You're all out in the water. You're out in deep water. Yeah, this is wrong. And some of you will probably say that, well, it's It's not necessarily wrong, it's just not right. And some of you will be like, holy moly, mother of Jesus and God, here he is, the Messiah of economics. We all have different perspectives, right? And we all have different backgrounds and contexts, so to what we know and what we don't know. But I thought this was bloody hilarious, and I just wanted to share it. It might be that I'm reading a book in 2 weeks that, displays why this does not work. But I just thought, hilarious. So, thought I would share it. And yet again, this was kind of a raw development of the idea as I saw it. I haven't really been talking with anyone about it yet. But it's going to be different on that today. Probably going to shout about it sounds wrong, but converse about it, yeah? Just engage in conversation with anyone who wants to listen, because again, thought it was kind of interesting. Anyway, that was it for me, mates. Have a nice one, and I'll see you tomorrow with graduation. Because it's graduation tomorrow. And hopefully I'll find clothes still there, because otherwise it's going to be a nightmare. Have a nice one, mate. See you.